This pack and a lot of what's inside of it is gear that you've likely never seen before and maybe never even heard of. Everything from the sleeping pad with the most unbelievable specs I've ever seen, to the quilt system, to the inflation pump. Trips like the one I'm on now, where I'm taking this gear out into the wild, are how I like to share with you guys my first impressions on new and exciting gear. It's the second step in my testing process after initially playing around with the gear at home, where I determine whether the gear is worth testing further or if it's going to be going into the junk bin. I'm going to start by talking about two of the on-trail items that I'm testing out, the pack and then my shoes, and then once we get to camp, I'll talk about those camp items. The shoe that I'm testing out is the Hoka Speedgoat 6, and I'm excited about this because the Hoka Speedgoat 5 has been my go-to shoe for a couple years, ever since they released it, and I'm excited about the Speedgoat 6 because Hoka promises to address a few of the issues that I had with the Speedgoat 5. One of the issues was that I found the upper didn't accommodate a wider foot. I don't have a super wide foot, but even with the size wide Speedgoat 5, I was having issues with my pinky toe kind of poking out on the side here. That only wasn't as comfortable as it could be, but it also led to some premature wear in the upper, and I found that the upper material on the Speedgoat 5 just wasn't as durable as I would have liked. The third issue with the Speedgoat 5 was that the midsole wasn't super durable. It'd start to pack out pretty quickly, and then once that happened, you'd be more susceptible to foot fatigue. With the Speedgoat 6, Hoka says that they redesigned the upper to not only be more durable, but to accommodate different foot shapes better. So while you might not be able to fit in this shoe if you have a super wide forefoot, if you have a foot like mine that is kind of on the wider side in the front, then you're gonna fit a little bit nicer in this shoe, apparently. I can tell you that my first impressions so far with the Speedgoat 6 after a handful of miles are that it feels very comfortable, just as comfortable as the Speedgoat 5s, but with a little bit more room in the forefoot. You can see on the Speedgoat 6s that my pinky toe isn't pushing out the side quite as much as it did with the Speedgoat 5s. Only time will really tell how durable the upper material is and then how resilient the midsole is. So I'll probably have to give you an update after like 500, 600 miles. Otherwise, all the things that I loved with the Speedgoat 5 continue with the Speedgoat 6. Vibram Mega Grip sole for awesome grip, a very tall stack height in order to provide a lot of cushion in order to prevent foot fatigue, and just an overall good fit where the heel is nice and snug, but you do have that little bit more room in the forefoot, especially if you get the wide version of the shoe. The pack is really interesting. It's made by Z-Packs and they're calling it the Super Nero. It's a frameless pack and it's Z-Packs' first kind of foray into vest style shoulder straps. I've been a big fan of vest style shoulder straps for a long time for a couple different reasons. The first one being that I don't like using a hip belt if I'm going ultralight, and with traditional shoulder straps, a lot of the weight gets put right on your traps, but with a vest style shoulder strap, the weight gets distributed over your shoulder and chest a lot more evenly, and it's a lot more comfortable to carry heavier weights with a vest style shoulder strap. The second reason is that vest style shoulder straps are wider than traditional shoulder straps, and because of that, you have a lot more real estate for pockets. I love having a lot of pockets on my shoulder straps because I find it really easy to be able to grab items as I need them while I'm hiking. And when I'm moving fast and covering distance, I don't really like to stop that much. So being able to just grab anything I need, like snacks, sunscreen, whatever it is, right from my shoulders is really convenient. With traditional shoulder straps, you might just have one pocket on each shoulder strap. But with a vest style shoulder strap like I have here, I have 3 different pockets on each shoulder strap. So I have a big long pocket that I could put a water bottle in, or I have bear spray on this side, and then there's a little smaller pocket in front of it which is great for maybe sunscreen or snacks, and then you have a zippered pocket as well that you can put like keys or your phone, things that you don't want to lose. I'm pretty sure Z-Packs has never made a pack with vest style shoulder straps before, so I was pretty interested to test this one out because it's kind of hard to implement them sometimes. But with my initial testing and then on trail right now with about 22 pounds in the pack, it's carrying quite well. It's distributing weight well, it's not pinching anywhere, and it's the pack's kind of riding in a good spot. What's really interesting though is that there's attachment points on the shoulder straps that aren't being used with this Super Nero that makes me think that Z-Packs is gonna make this an option on their entire line of packs, which is really cool. I think there's gonna be big demand for an arc haul style pack, but with a vest style shoulder strap. Otherwise, the pack is just really well designed. You have water bottle pockets on the side that are easy to reach. You have a big mesh pocket on the front here, some straps on the bottom if you want to put a chair on there, and then you have a roll top on the pack just so you can make it either as tall or as low as you want. You can get a few different options for the hip belt. I opted for the 1-inch webbing hip belt just because I really just didn't want anything there, but you can get a fully padded hip belt if you want, or just get no hip belt at all. I'm heading up to a mountain pass, and by the sounds of it, it could be pretty windy up there. We're gonna have to see once we get there whether I can find a place to shelter. But as I'm gaining elevation, I'm realizing that there's a piece of gear that I don't have with me, but that has been an awesome new piece of gear that is making going up these hills a whole lot easier. It's an open trap bar from Bells of Steel, and why that's cool is because of how it allows me to exercise in a more efficient way. First of all, it allows me to do deadlifts in a more ergonomic fashion. I can stand inside of the bar, not have to kind of reach forward in order to grab the bar, and I can hold the bar in a more ergonomic way with my hands vertical instead of horizontal on the bar. And depending on my stance inside the bar and then how I position my hips, I can either load up my body in a more squat-like position where my quads are taking a lot of the load, or I can shift into a position that's more in line with a traditional deadlift where I'm loading up my posterior chain. I also love how this bar allows me to load plates on. I just roll it onto the legs and then I can just slide plates right on. I'm not having to use bar lifters or have to hold up the bar with one hand, slide the plate on with the other. It's an easy system, especially when I'm loading a lot of weight onto the bar, and I just tip the bar over and then I can do my deadlifts. A third reason is that it reduces injuries. Studies show that using an open trap bar compared to a traditional barbell reduces injuries when you are doing deadlifts. And as I'm getting older, reducing my injuries is becoming more and more of a priority. Bells of Steel gave me a discount on setting up my entire home gym, but I went with them after a lot of research because they have the best quality equipment for the best value. If you want to check out the trap bar or any of the gear that I'm talking about today, then head to the video description for some links. Made it to where I'm going to be setting up camp. This is one of my favorite spots in all the Canadian Rockies. It's beautiful. We have this lake right here. I'm gonna get my tent set up and my sleep system set up, which are both items I'm gonna be sharing with you guys, new gear that I'm testing on this trip. And then I'll take you on a little bit of a tour and we'll start talking gear. The tent that I'm testing out is the Nemo Dragonfly 1P. It's a one-person freestanding tent, and I've been testing out a lot more one-person freestanding tents this year because they kind of intrigue me for a few different reasons. Number one is that freestanding tents are a lot easier to set up on tough ground, like if the ground is really sandy or if it's rocky like right here. The second reason is footprint. I have a very small tent site right here. I would not have been able to fit a two-person tent here, never mind a two-person trekking pole tent. The Nemo Dragonfly is able to tuck in really easily against the wind barrier that I have on the other side, and I still have lots of room in front of me in order to hang out and spend some time around camp. Other than the inherent benefits of a one-person freestanding tent, there's two other things that really intrigue me about the Nemo Dragonfly specifically. The first one is the weight. It's the lightest one-person freestanding tent that I could find at 948 grams. It's really cool to find a freestanding tent that gets under that 1 kilogram mark. The second reason is storm worthiness. I've had the two-person Dragonfly out in some really windy, tough weather, and it handled that quite well. So I'm excited to test out the Dragonfly on this trip because it's really windy right now, if you couldn't tell, and I want to see how it does relative to the two-person version. I think it'll do well. It has a really good shape for dumping wind, just like the two-person. It also has a lot of guy out points that I can use if the wind really picks up, but I think it should be fine in the kind of wind that I'm in right now. The one thing that I'm not convinced about with one-person freestanding tents is that they're not very roomy inside. One-person trekking pole tents are often quite a bit roomier, whereas with one-person freestanding tents, you usually just have enough room for the sleeping pad and maybe a little bit of gear beside you. I'm gonna wait till tomorrow morning to give you a full rundown of the sleep system and why I'm really excited for it, but I'll introduce you to the items that I'm looking at and I'll tell you why I'm excited to test them out. The sleeping pad is kind of insane. It's made by HiEnture and they never took the time to name it, so I just called it the HiEnture sleeping pad, just like I called their pillow the HiEnture pillow. It has a similar baffling system to the Nemo Tensor line, so it's gonna be about as comfortable as those pads. But what makes this pad crazy is the weight, R value, and then most of all, the price. The pad weighs 620 grams for the regular wide version that I have here, which isn't super light. It's kind of that middle ground as far as sleeping pads go. The HiEnture sleeping pad has an R value of 6.2, which pretty much brings it into the winter camping realm as far as pads go, at a really reasonable weight for that R value. I've taken a look at the pad underneath light to see how the Mylar film is kind of suspended inside the pad, and I can see that it's right close to the top, right close to the bottom, and then it looks like there's a couple layers suspended throughout the middle. So unlike with some other pads that use this technology, we're not gonna be running into the issue where all the Mylar film kind of drops to the bottom and it ends up being way less effective. You get a pad that seems like it's gonna be relatively comfortable. I'll report back tomorrow morning, has crazy warmth to weight ratio, all at a price of $75 US, which is kind of insane. That would be inexpensive for a pad that didn't have the performance characteristics of this one. That being said, as with kind of any budget product that's making bold claims, I need to put it through its paces and I need to see how cold I can take it, most importantly. I'm also really excited for this top installation kind of sleep system that I'm gonna be testing out for two reasons. First of all, the price. It only costs $280 US, which is Very inexpensive for a top quilt that's -2 comfort rated, never mind for everything else that you get with this. The second reason is that it's another system that's looking at kind of bringing all the comfort that you get with a quilt to a system where you don't really have to fiddle around with pad straps very much, and it eliminates pretty much any drafts that you might get. You might think that that kind of sounds like the Zenbivy system, which this system is similar to, but approaches it in a quite different way. The major similarity is that they use a sheet that goes over top of the sleeping pad in order to kind of create the base structure for the entire system. Then instead of having flaps with either zippers or clips, they use a zipper along the entire edge of the sheet in order to attach the quilt. With the zipper running all the way around the perimeter of the sheet, you can either unzip it completely and just have the quilt kind of draped over top of you, like if it's a very warm night, or if you really want to kind of lock it down, you zip up both sides, do up the next cinch, and then you're kind of all set. From my testing at home, once I have it all zipped up, it feels like it's as kind of secure and warm as a sleeping bag, but then you can toss and turn underneath it just as effectively as you can with a quilt. They also introduced a pillow attachment system that really locks the pillow onto the sleeping pad and allows you to use any pillow that you want, which I find very intriguing because there's some pillows out there that I'd love to use and test out, but that don't have a way to attach it to the sleeping pad, which makes it a no-go for me because I don't like having to chase my pillow around the tent as I toss and turn throughout the night. Rockfront, who's a Ukrainian company that makes this entire system, all the pieces here are made in Ukraine, which is pretty cool, uses a buckle system in order to put this pillowcase onto the sheet, and then you can just slide any pillow that you want into the pillowcase, cinch it up, and then you're good to go. You can sleep on that, and the pillow's not going to be flying around the tent throughout the night. The pillow that I'm using on this trip is the Decathlon pillow, which is a very comfortable pillow. It has nice height to it, a nice little foam topper, very lightweight, but doesn't have a pad attachment system, so I've just never been using it. So really excited to be sleeping on this tonight using the Rockfront system. The way I inflated my sleeping pad was pretty cool. It was using the lightest sleeping pad pump ever made. This thing only weighs 9 grams. I've been testing it out at home a lot, and when I first got it, I was a little bit skeptical. My two questions were, how durable is it? Because it feels very lightweight and it's 3D printed, so it just doesn't feel like it'd be that durable. And then the second and probably more important question is, how well can it actually inflate a sleeping pad? Before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about how it's made and then how it achieves that really lightweight 9 grams. There's 2 parts to the pump system. So you have this fan that pushes air, and there's no power source in here. In order to power it, there's a USB-C port right there. You plug in a cable and then plug that cable into a power bank, and then it powers the fan for you. The other component is the sleeping pad adapter. So this just fits right over top of the fan. So the creator sells a bunch of different adapters that fit all of the most popular sleeping pads out there, and they do it in a way that really kind of maximizes how much air is getting pushed into the sleeping pad. All of the adapters are very lightweight. This entire system weighs 9 grams, the pump and the adapter. And then once you're ready to inflate, you just hold this button on the bottom, it turns on, it'll do a little like song for you, which is nice to see that it's turned on, and then you just double press it and it starts pumping. There's 4 different modes for it, 4 different speeds. It gets pretty loud at the highest speed. You probably don't want to be using that in situations where you're camping with a lot of people around, but when it's at that highest speed, it inflates pads quite quickly. So how durable is it and how effective is it? From a durability standpoint, I've been pleasantly surprised. I've dropped it on the rocks here already a couple of times, and it's fine. It's probably going to hold up pretty good just with normal use. I probably wouldn't be throwing it against rocks or dropping it often, but just kind of throwing it in your ditty bag, you're not going to have to worry about its durability at all. The one spot where I'd maybe question durability is at the USB-C port. Ports are kind of notorious for being weak links, so plugging in and taking out a USB-C plug a lot might wear that out. So you know what, I'll ask the creator who makes this, because we've been chatting back and forth and had some great conversations, really enjoyed chatting with him. And I'll see if he's done any tests on how many times he's been able to take this out and put it back in, because he's done tests on a lot of other aspects of this to make sure that it's going to work and be durable and all those kind of things. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's done a durability test on the plug. When it comes to how well it inflates quite well. For something that weighs 9 grams, it inflates quickly and it inflates pretty effectively. The one issue that I've had with some other pumps in the past, especially lightweight ones, is that they won't get the sleeping pad fully inflated. It'll get it to about like 80, 90%, and then you have to put in some breaths. And that's the case with this pump. After I use it, I have to put in usually 1, maybe 2 breaths, and then the pad gets nice and firm. A lot of people out there, I know you're inflating your pads to 80, 90% for comfort reasons, and this pump is pretty much gonna get you right there. Something to keep in mind, and something that I know the creator of the Pad Pal, which is the name of the pump, wants people to keep in mind, is that this is an ultralight product. With ultralight products, there's always gonna be some compromises, and that's the case with the Pad Pal. That being said, if you're someone who is a very ultralight backpacker, maybe you're a thru hiker or a fast packer, and you've just gotten sick of having to inflate your pad using your breath at the end of the day, then the Pad Pal could be a great option for you. I know when I was on the Great Divide Trail thru hiking, I did not bring a pump because it was some extra weight that I just did not want. So I was inflating my pad with my breath, and it was really annoying at the end of the day. If the Pad Pal was around at that point in time, it's definitely something I would have been bringing. I know this is a first impressions video and there's some other first impressions of this pump out there, but like I said, I've been testing it quite a bit at home, which is probably just as effective as testing it out in the field, because I'm getting reps in of inflating different pads, different systems, using different adapters, and pulling the plug in and out, turning it on and off. And it's been working really well for me. So I'm gonna keep using it, especially in the field under conditions where I am throwing it in my pack, taking it out a lot. I also haven't been babying it at home because I would really want to test out the durability. And at this point, I do want to test it out a little bit more long term, but I've been really impressed with it so far. So I wouldn't say that this is a first impressions of the pump. It's kind of that next level where I've been testing it quite a bit. That kind of brings something up that I wanted to ask you guys about, and that's when to share gear that I'm going to be testing out, and that I'm really excited for. I've had the Pad Pal for weeks. I've had a lot of this gear for a while, and I've just been testing it out at home. But I easily could have shared it with you from the studio, said, here's some new gear that I'm testing, maybe keep an eye on it, ask for your thoughts if you guys have experience with it, instead of waiting like a month, sometimes 2 months before getting the product out on a trip and testing it out and giving you my first impressions under kind of in the wild conditions. I think it's really important to give you guys kind of my real first impressions from the trail, but if you guys want to see kind of a sneak peek of items from the studio before I get them out on trail, let me know in the comments and I might start doing that. I'm pretty hungry, but as I get dinner going, I want to give you guys an update on the lid that I've been working on. So I've talked about this before, but I've been working with Braxton from Peak Outdoors in order to develop a lid that goes on standard backpacking pots. So pots like Toke's pots that are 95 millimeters wide and fit kind of a standard fuel canister inside them. We wanted to do a few different things with this lid, but the big one was being able to attach a fuel canister to the lid itself and then snap the lid onto the pot. So you can see the fuel canister there is being held on with some clips, and then the whole system just attaches onto a pot, and then it just is locked on. So you're not having your fuel can kind of rattling around as much. You're not getting rust rings on the pot. And then there's some other features as well that I'm really excited about. So maybe you guys can pick those out as I kind of get dinner ready. But right now we're pretty much finalizing the design, and then we're gonna get a plastic mold made, and then it's gonna be a plastic lid made from polyester. So it's gonna be food safe. So you're gonna be able to boil water with the lid on the pot, and then there's kind of a little spout there so you can pour water out of it effectively into your freeze-dried meals. And like I said, a lot of other features. So once the mold's made, then the next step is to get some not prototypes necessarily, but some early samples in order to put it through its paces to make sure from a durability standpoint and just from like a fit standpoint that everything's going to be working out no problem. Something that I'm really proud of and that's pretty cool with this lid is that we're patent pending on a few different features that it has. So we're going to be going through with the full patent procedure over the next year here, but it's pretty cool to have your name on a patent. I'm gonna enjoy my dinner, enjoy the lake, this sunset that's happening right now, and then tomorrow morning I'll give you guys an update on how I slept, how the sleeping pad performed, how the rock front quilt system performed. I also have one more piece of gear that I'll be testing out as I hike out tomorrow. I'm not optimistic about it though. All this other gear I think is pretty cool, and I'm optimistic that it's gonna be gear that I wanna test out a lot more. But this other piece of gear might be a flop and going into the junk bin. With that being said, good night, guys. We'll see you in the morning. Good morning. I did not sleep well last night, but not because of the sleep system. It was because the wind ended up picking up last night and was just shaking the tent all night, and it really made it hard to sleep. Wind was still howling this morning, so as soon as I woke up, I just packed up my tent and then walked down trail a little bit to get to the sheltered area so I can eat breakfast in peace without being just pummeled by wind. As far as how well my sleep system performed, I'll start with the sleeping pad. From a comfort perspective, it was as good as a Nemo Tensor, which makes sense. It uses the exact same baffling system pretty much. And I slept pretty good on it. It's not the most comfortable pad out there, but it does the job. For warmth, I was plenty warm on the pad, which makes sense for a pad that it has a 6.2 R value. And just so you know, I don't think I mentioned this before, it's ASTM standard. So they did send it to a lab, get it tested by the ASTM standard that all the other kind of big companies use, and then came back with that 6.2 R value. They know that you and I are gonna kind of look at that R value a little bit skeptically, so they even on their Amazon page posted the ASTM report that shows that 6.2 R value. While I do need to test the pad out in colder conditions, the conditions I was out in weren't terrible. If it had an R value kind of in the 2s or 3s, I probably would have been feeling a little bit cold due to the wind, as well as the fact that I was at elevation, temperatures got down to about 5 degrees Celsius. I was also right next to a cold lake, and with the water level probably being a foot below me, I was gonna have influence from that, and the ground was probably fairly cold for this time of year. So I can confidently say that the HiEnture probably has an R value at least in the 4s, but I wouldn't doubt if it had an R value in the 6.2s just based on the ASTM testing that they did, and then how the insulation is kind of suspended inside the pad and how that technology is being used. As far as the rock front quilt system, for a system that all in, including the pillow attachment, the sheet, the quilt, weighs 628 grams and has a minus 2 degrees Celsius comfort rating, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought that maybe the system was gonna be a little bit finicky to use, or there's just gonna be little things that I was gonna find annoying with it, but overall it performed well. It kept out drafts. I was definitely feeling wind coming into the tent, and it was blocking all of that out. So the zipper system that they have works well. The pillow system locked the pillow onto the pad really effectively, more effectively than I thought it would. And then the warmth was on point. I wasn't pushing the warmth rating of the quilt at all, but I was plenty warm last night. I really like that I could easily toss and turn inside the pad. It just works quite well. And it has a neck cinch system that is more effective than similar systems out there. I'm gonna finish my breakfast and hit the trail, and I have a couple thoughts on the Super Nero pack here that I wanna share with you. There's just a couple things that I think Z-Packs needs to tweak. And then we'll also get into that last item that I haven't shared with you guys yet. Overall, I'm really liking the Super Nero. I think it's gonna be a great pack for a lot of people out there. But the one issue that I'm having has to do with the pockets on the shoulder strap. These two kind of spandexy pockets, you have the smaller one down low, and then you have the bigger one that can fit a water bottle or bear spray at the top here. They're a little bit floppy, and what I would like to see Z-Packs do is introduce a cinch along the top like my Zerk 40 pack has, and a lot of running packs have this as well. So if you do need to cinch around the top in order to lock in whatever's in that pocket, you can do that. And then running vests also use that cinch system in order to introduce a way to kind of lock on to the water bottle, so you can kind of loop it over top of the cap, and then it keeps the water bottle inside the pocket instead of kind of bouncing out as you're running. The only other issue with the pack that I'm kind of having is when I bend over, sometimes if my butt's up in the air, then my water bottle falls out, and I snapped the cap on the one water bottle because of that. So maybe they need to adjust the pockets slightly. I like that I can reach back and grab water bottles from the pockets, but you don't want your water bottles falling out. And I haven't had that issue with other Z-Packs packs or some other packs that I've used where I still can reach the water bottle pockets. Before I let you know which gear I'm really excited to keep testing and what's going into the junk bin, I want to talk about this off-road scooter from GoTrax because it was really useful on this trip. I know it's not going to be useful for a lot of people out there, but on this trip there's about 10 kilometers of ATV road that I had to go down before I got to the base of the mountain in order to get up to the lake that I stayed at. And it would have been several hours of really boring hiking. So having this scooter allowed me to cover that distance in about an hour. There's definitely some downsides with the scooter, but the good things about it are that it covers the distance quickly and it does have off-road capabilities. The downsides are that it's not able to go up hills quite as effectively as I would have liked. Hills that I didn't think were that steep, I had to walk up. And then I'm also not a fan of the throttle. So there's a thumb throttle here. I rather have had kind of a twist handle throttle. I find that's just a little bit easier when I'm going over bumps, whereas my thumb kind of jitters a little bit on the thumb throttle. I'm probably not going to keep testing the scooter for the channel, but I'm definitely going to be using it on several trips because there's a lot of trips in the Canadian Rockies, especially in the foothills here, where it is nice to kind of be able to get to the base of the mountains before I'm able to kind of hike in the good stuff. As for which gear I'm excited to keep testing out, the pack is definitely one of them. It's really cool to see Z-Packs kind of going through this year of innovation and trying new things and really broadening their categories that they're making gear in, because for a while they're a little bit stagnant, but this year they've really done a lot and it's really exciting to see. I'm a little on the fence about the tents still. One person freestanding tents are cool, they have their place, but I'm not sure that they're necessarily going to be a staple for me when I'm going on trips. The quilt system from Rockfront has a lot of potential for people out there, so definitely keep an eye on the channel for reviews on that, because it's something I'm really going to be taking a look at, especially at that price point. And then the pump, 9 grams. I go ultralight. I do like my extreme ultralight trips, my super ultralight trips, my fast packing trips, and that pump is going to be going with me now, because there's nothing I dislike more. Oh, there's a lot of things I dislike more, but I definitely dislike having to inflate a sleeping pad with my breath after a really hard day. And then the Hoka Speedgoat 6s, probably going to be my go-to shoe for the rest of the year until they come out with the Speedgoat 7s, or someone finally makes a shoe that I like better. This kind of trip is one of my favorites, where I'm getting up to a beautiful area, getting some solitude, then also testing out some new gear, testing out just gear in general. In the past, I've second guessed how much I talk about gear on this channel, but I think I'm gonna stop doing that. I'm just gonna embrace the fact that I'm a gearhead. People who like hearing about gear, learning about gear, even if it's something that they're not gonna buy, are gonna enjoy that kind of content, and I enjoy making it. So hopefully that comes through. I'll still always have a mix of trips that are more focused on kind of challenging myself, but then also trips that are focused on the gear like this one. But I'm gonna stop apologizing for being a gearhead. If you wanna see a trip that I think is a nice mix, go check out this video right up here, where I go on a trip over 3 days where I'm carrying a 60-pound pack. It was a trip that beat me up, and I learned a lot on it, and I share a lot of those learnings with you guys.